Me now? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Great.
the signal is miserable, maybe because I have been using too much and now it's end of the month. But let us hope for the best. So anyway, uh, we have to be flexible. This is the meaning. We have to be hard with oneself and soft to others. This is the wisdom. So if we can do it, wonderful. If we can't do it, so we try. And so this is the meaning of dependent origination. Nothing is fixed. Everything depends on causes and conditions. And we need causes and conditions of good life as a layman, and we need causes and conditions of the heavenly life. And we have to know causes and conditions of nirvana. So then your study of Buddhism is complete. So we have a lot to learn. We have to know causes of conditions for living good life here as human beings, causes and conditions for going up to heaven, and causes and conditions for nirvana. And our Buddhist study is complete. So don't worry, much to learn, and this makes the study wonderful. Okay, so we can start. Any other questions coming along? Agus not here, so no questions so far. So let us continue. So we have stopped last time with the 4 mirrors. The 4 mirrors represent the enlightened mind in the state of bondage that we are. We are in a state of bondage because we are still subjected to 2 things: to clinging to our differentiations, to our views, and clinging to sensuality. We have these 2 clinging, so we know we are not in nirvana. So we still have defilements. We have raga, we have grasping for pleasures of senses. Pleasures of senses are not a problem, but grasping to them is a big problem. Then we have likings and dislikings. Because we grasp to objects of senses, we have disliking also. Because we have liking and disliking, we are subjected to ignorance. We don't reflect the facts, but we reflect our, say, subjective understanding of the facts. And then we have pride, we have doubts, and we have all kinds of views, especially most important, we have the view of the self being something as different from other beings. So in this condition, of course, we are bound to suffer. If we have more wisdom, we suffer less. If we have less wisdom, we suffer more. Even so, it may not be clear because the wisdom is very subtle. We may think that we suffer little, we have wisdom, but in fact, unless we have wisdom, when the suffering comes, we don't know how to cope with it. And suffering is bound to come. We have to remember we are all bound to get sick. We are all bound to be old, and we are all bound to die. So suffering is knocking on the door. And if we can encounter it with wisdom, then we benefit from suffering. If we don't encounter it with wisdom, we don't benefit from suffering. Now, the process of liberation in this tradition is the tradition of the mind only. Because we don't understand everything is mind, that all the dharmas, all the phenomena we experienced are governed by one phenomena, and that is mind. This is even said in the Theravada, in I think it's Samyutta Nikaya, Chittena niyate loko, chittena parikasati, chittasa eka dhammasa, sabbe dhamma vasam admagu. The uh, the world is led by the mind, the world is controlled by the mind, all the phenomena are in the power of one phenomena, which is mind. Now, we don't understand it. In this tradition, it is taken for granted. The objects do not exist outside of the mind. Because the objects do not exist outside of the mind, our differentiation, when we believe in real objects there somewhere, our differentiation is bound to be connected with ignorance. That's why Vasubandhu explains in Cheng Wei Shalun, in the 30 commentary to the 30 verses of mere consciousness by Vasubandhu. He explains that the Buddha's realization is the just nothing but the realization of mind only. The perfect realization of the mind only in this tradition is a Buddhahood. Now, in this tradition, and most of the techniques of Mahayana meditation are connected with this tradition, the nirvana is a natural state. So the process of liberation is going back to the natural state. And the natural state of mind is like a mirror or like empty space. Then whatever differentiation is there, they are already bound, we will learn, and we have learned already, they are already bound by, if we cling to them, they are bound to the karmic mind. And we cannot avoid holding to the karmic mind. But this karmic mind hides the true nature of the mind, which is nirvana. Due to karma, our mind moves, but we have learned the movement of the mind is not the nature of the mind. We have to distinguish between the nature of the mind, which does not move, and it is called suchness, or emptiness, or dharmakaya, and the movement of the mind. So the mind essence does not change. What changes are the images. They are called nimitta, or the objects of the mind. So the mind, because it has the nature of the mirror, it reflects all the objects as they are. So this is the mind of the Buddha. But we don't have this mind because our mind, we will learn hopefully today, it does not see the four kinds of consciousness explained in this tradition of mere consciousness or mere mind. Four kinds of consciousness have to be transformed into wisdom. Then we become Buddha. Transform is the same word in Chinese as develop, 转. The mind has to develop into the wisdom. So we have 4 kinds of mind. So we have 4 kinds of wisdom. These wisdoms, they are covered for us by the layers of ignorance. So we have basic ignorance because we believe in the mind which moves. And we have the secondary ignorance when we follow the mind which moves. And we are bound to follow the mind which moves because we don't have the wisdom to see that this mind which moves is, as the Pragya Paramita Sutras, Mahayana Sutras explain, is like the second moon. It's like the dream. It's like an echo. And so on. Many, many examples you will find of the non-reality of the mind which moves. So even so, the images are moving. The essence of the mind cannot move. That means the mind is sui yuan chuan. It means it develops according to the objects. And objects are, in fact, the images or reflections in the mirror. So we have 4 consciousnesses, so we have 4 mirrors. The basic consciousness is called alaya. And we have learned this alaya is transformed into the universal mirror. We have discussed last time. This universal mirror is free from all objects. So it is, we have enlightenment, we have learned, has 2 aspects. The original enlightenment has 2 aspects. The aspect of emptiness and the aspect of non-emptiness, or real emptiness and real non-emptiness. So the aspect of non-emptiness is the mind which has the connected with the say, in this tradition we have the illusionary self and we have the real self. The real self is not empty because the pure Dharma is not empty. It is always, in its very nature, it is always perfuming the mind. So we will learn in this treatise, we have perfumation from the point of view of suchness and perfumation from the point of view of ignorance. Perfumation from the point of view of suchness deletes the defilements and holding to the views and to sensuality. The perfumation through ignorance gives rise to illusionary thinking, taking illusionary thinking for something which really exists. And due to illusionary thinking, believing that it exists, is the illusionary attachment to the objects as being something there, real, which are just actually images in the mirror of the mind. So we see the world through the services of the organ of thinking. Organ of thinking is called manas. And this manas is something which prevents us from seeing the pure quality of alaya, of store consciousness, which is nirvana, which does not move. We do not see it because of manas, because of the organ of thinking. We will learn about it hopefully today. Now, if the manas, organ of thinking, turns into wisdom, it becomes the wisdom of sameness, samatha jnana. Organ of sameness helps us to see the essence which is not moving, and the images which are always moving as being actually not different. That's for sameness. Now we come to the third mirror, which belongs to the mental consciousness and to the five consciousnesses. They are connected, but here they are separated. In the rest of our work, they are usually put together. So they are, the first is mental consciousness, because a mental consciousness, without mental consciousness, the visual consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, the tongue consciousness and body consciousness cannot function. They function because we have mental consciousness, right? So because we have mental consciousness, we can, when it becomes the Miao Quan King, the mirror of wonderful observation, we can observe the wonderful observation is observation of the mind which has no ashrava, which has no inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind. So this third mirror is called the mirror free from phenomena. That is not empty dharmas. That means it sees, since it is pure, it sees all phenomena as having no nature of their own. This is beautiful observation. And because it is a beautiful observation in which is governed by emptiness, not by any self-existing nature, therefore it is not hindered. It is not hindered by defilements or by intellect. We have to understand the sixth consciousness is based on intellect. It is based on the continuity of the mind, because our intellect is based on the continuity of the mind. That's why the wise, even the wisest men, think that they don't know anything, like Socrates. Why? Because what we know is based on the continuity of the mind, and this continuity of the mind, unless we get the bodhisattva non-dualistic realization, which is very difficult, we cannot penetrate. But if our mental consciousness turns to wisdom, we can penetrate it. Then our intellect will not be hindered by defilements. So in this case, it will be free. text says, from the quality of combining. Combining means alaya combines, in this tradition, pure and impure. So, because here alaya has become the universal mirror, there is no question of impure in universal mirror. So our intellect also becomes non-hindered. So because it is non-hindered, it is filled with immaculate virtues. And it means in Buddhist tradition to be filled with immaculate virtues. It means nothing in it can be really grasped. There is no grasping of objects. There is no grasping of the views. So there are no obstacles. There are no obstacles in the pure mirror of the intellect, of the differentiating mind, because here in this tradition, the sixth consciousness is a differentiating mind. But our differentiating mind, we do not understand that it is just, there is nothing to grasp in it. We don't understand because we have not transformed our alaya into universal mirror, and we have not transferred our organ of thinking, our manas, into the mirror, into the wisdom of sameness. So our intellect is hindered. But now we already, all our mind has been transformed into wisdom, so our intellect is not hindered. So it can become the clear mirror of beautiful vision. Everything that it reflects is beautiful because it is free from grasping. It is free from obstacles. In Buddhism, we know the cause of suffering is grasping. And in this tradition, and it is a genuine Buddhist tradition, the object of grasping is the mind. The real object of grasping is the mind. If we don't grasp to the mind, we cannot grasp at the objects. First, we have to grasp at the mind, then we can grasp at the objects. There is no question of grasping at the object without grasping at the mind. So this mind of the uh, of the mirror separated from phenomena is never losing its pure nature, and it reacts to the objects according to the causes and conditions of. Now we have the last mirror, which belongs to the five consciousnesses, visual consciousness and so on. And it is called the mirror which takes vasanas of beings as object. Very wonderful. We have learned before, please go through it again and again because there are so many things to learn. We have learned that the original enlightenment has the aspect of the emptiness and non-emptiness, real emptiness and real non-emptiness. Then We have also learned that the reality of the enlightenment has the aspect of pure wisdom and unthinkable action. Please remember, it was before. These are the two aspects of the penchue of the original enlightenment in bondage. Which are we? We are the original enlightenment or nirvana in bondage. This state of nirvana in bondage, which is not real bondage, is called the womb of Tathagata. We all have, our mind all has the nature of nirvana, so we are same like the Buddhas. But the Buddhas, they know it, but we don't know it. Because we don't know it, we are in trouble. The trouble comes from not knowing the real nature of the mind, which Buddhism teaches, even though very different interpretations. Pabhasaram idam chitam agantukehi kilesehi upaklitam. This mind is shining, is pure, and the defilements of the mind are agantuka, are guests to the mind. In Theravada, it is explained that this mind is called bhavanga. This bhavanga is originally pure, but it's defiled by the karmic consciousness. So it is similar to alaya. Alaya is originally pure, but defiled by the defilements which are, so to say, the outer layer of the mind, not the nature of the mind. Now, mirror takes the vasanas, that means the impregnation of the mind by our habits, mostly bad habits. The more we meditate, this is a difference between meditators and non-meditators. The more we meditate, the more aware we become of our bad habits. When we don't meditate, we are not aware of our bad habits. So this is a real trouble. We have bad habits, but we are not aware of them. When we meditate, we become aware of our bad habits. But these objects of the mind, they are the causes of the movement of the mind. This is very important to understand. And the original mind is one mind. And the one mind is the nature of the mind which does not move. It is the Dharmakaya. But here we have mirror which takes vasanas of being as object. So this original enlightenment has the capacity of reacting spontaneously to the needs of the being. And because the karmas of the beings are unthinkable, pusai, so this capacity of the mind, of the original enlightenment mind, is also unthinkable. Because we cannot think we are how many milliards of beings, only us human beings, we are now maybe 7 billion or almost 8 billion, I don't know. Now, how many billions of the other beings? It's uncountable. So this pure five senses, they don't react because they are wisdom. They don't react due to attachment, due to grasping. They react according to the needs of the beings, which are unthinkable. So it is the original enlightenment, the real nature of our mind, free from all phenomena. So it can illumine the minds of being everywhere, cause them to cultivate the kushala mulas, the roots of well-being. That means akushala mulas, the roots of non-well-being. They are grasping, hate, and ignorance. The kushala mula, the roots of well-being, they are the opposite: non-grasping, non-anger, and non-ignorance. So they always in peace. So being always in peace, the five consciousnesses react to beings because we perceive beings by our fifth senses. They react to beings according to their needs. According to their needs means according to their habits, because our needs are governed by our habits. And the habits, they are the permeations of our mind through good deeds or bad deeds. So this expresses, we have learned in the beginning of the treatise, we should always read again and again to be more and more aware of its subtleties. We have learned in the beginning this meaning of the Mahayana is a great essence, great characteristics, and great functions. So this force mirror is the great functions of the mind. And this previous mirror is connected with the great characteristics, because the mental consciousness is what distinguishes the different characteristics. So it means that the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of great nirvana as opposed to the individual nirvana, permeates the minds of all beings. When you go to Nepal, I will soon be in Nepal, or to Tibet, you will see in the stupa, you have eyes in every direction. So the eyes of the Buddha, they illumine all the directions, up and down and left and right and front and behind, and in between directions. They illumine, and the wisdom of the Buddha appears in accordance with our ability to receive it. So this is this mirror which takes vasanas of us beings as object. So we have the four mirrors, which explains how our consciousness is transformed into wisdom. And in Indian tradition as opposed to our tradition. There are innumerable names for consciousness, many, many names for consciousness. The most common is Chitta, Manas, and Vijnana. The Chitta means alaya in this tradition, the base consciousness. The Manas means the organ of thinking. The organ of thinking sees the alaya as being the self. This is uh, uh, what the Vasubandhu explains in the 30 verses of Mere Consciousness. Here we will learn it's slightly different, but in fact, again, the manas means the function of thinking, the organ of thinking. And based on this organ of thinking, the function of thinking, we have the differentiating mind, which is called vijnana. Usually 6 vijnanas, mental consciousness, and the 5 sense consciousnesses, but they can be divided into mental consciousness and the 5 sense consciousnesses. So this previous part of the scripture explains, this 4 mirrors and so on, explains the meaning of the enlightenment. When we become enlightened, our 4 minds become 4 mirrors. No obstacle in any type of consciousness, no obstacle in alaya, no obstacle in manas, no obstacle in manovijnana, in mental consciousness, no obstacle in 5 consciousnesses. Now we have explained what the original enlightenment is. Because of the original enlightenment, we engage in the process of enlightenment. We have explained Shritye, but we can only engage in a process of enlightenment when we know we are not enlightened. This is a paradox with which the Zen tradition, not the Theravada tradition, is always working. We can only engage in effectively in meditation when we know we are not enlightened. When we think we have some enlightenment, then we we are not really engaging in a meditation, because a meditation is all understanding, penetrating our enlightenment. Because the mind is originally pure, but we can only understand its purity in relation to impurity. If there is no relation to impurity, we cannot understand the purity of the mind. So before, we have explained how we meditate from the end to the beginning. Now slowly, slowly, the author of this treatise is preparing us for understanding how to understand meditation from beginning to the end. And beginning is no ignorance. When ignorance starts, that means the pure mind and the impure mind, they are mixed together. But the Buddha, in this tradition, he has realized the non-dualistic enlightenment. Therefore, he does not cut away the defilements. He just reflects defilements as they are. So in this tradition, instead of removing defilements, we learn to understand, penetrate defilements of the beings without being defiled. This is the aim of Bodhisattva. To penetrate the defilements of the beings and reduce the defilements step by step, so that they stop bothering us. Then we can remain in the world without suffering. Because the world is a product of defilement. But because our Dharma eye is covered, so we don't see it. So the author explains to prepare us for understanding how we become non-enlightened. Before he has explained how we become enlightened. Now, how we become non-enlightened. We have to understand the two aspects. If we only understand how we become enlightened, then our knowledge is very partial. We have to understand how to become enlightened and how to become non-enlightened. Because enlightenment and non-enlightenment, they have to exist in mutual relation. That's how we can penetrate the world and the nirvana without being hindered. Unless we do that, we will be hindered. This is a logic. This is, of course, much more difficult than attain the purity of the mind and go away from the defilements, which is a world. We cannot go away from the defilements because what we are in Buddhism are the 5 aggregates. And we cannot go away from the 5 aggregates. We can. 5 aggregates, we have to understand the clinging to the 5 aggregates is the Mara, is the cause of death. The 5 aggregates themselves, they are even so being the product of clinging, they are not clinging by themselves. They are clinging due to our ignorance. And according to Buddhism, the ignorance cannot be something which really exists. If ignorance really existed, there would be no liberation. This is a logic. And the liberation only exists because there is ignorance and we penetrate the ignorance. But when we penetrate it, it will not hinder us because we understand the ignorance is an illusion. Nobody who has developed intellect will attain nirvana for the sake of annihilation. Nobody takes so much trouble to meditate and to do good deeds in order to be annihilated. This is a logic. The nirvana is annihilation only of the grasping. And the grasping is due to ignorance. And ignorance is the cause of clinging to the five aggregates, clinging to the world. But this ignorance cannot be considered as a real. So now he explains the process of understanding how we got defiled by the world. And I read my translation. The aspect of non-enlightenment, non-body, means not knowing oneness with suchness as it truly is. So this not knowing oneness with suchness as it truly is what is called the root ignorance. Because we don't penetrate this root ignorance, therefore we enter into the process of not being enlightened. This is very important to understand. So because we have the root ignorance, therefore we identify in this tradition with the moving mind. When we identify with the moving mind, we are already going astray. And going astray is a process of non-enlightenment, which is going to be explained. But without this preliminary introduction into the logic of this treatise, we won't understand. So there has to be someone who explains this. So when the mind does not move, it is itself suchness. This is a mere mind tradition. No matter whether we explain through point of view of like Vasubandhu Asanga from the point of view of alaya. Alaya is a mind which clings already. It dwells in the world. Or we explained like here from the point of view of the true mind hidden by our habits, which is the Buddha nature, or which is the womb of the Tathagata. No matter how we explain, when the mind moves, it is not suchness. When the mind moves, so it is not suchness in its pure form, because it's identified with the images which make the mind move. But it cannot leave, even so it moves according to the images which appears in the mind. It cannot really leave the nature of the mind, which is Buddhahood, which is same for us non-realized beings, and it is the same for the Buddhas. As long as we don't see it, so we believe in the individual enlightenment. Individual enlightenment in this tradition is called the seeming enlightenment. We have explained. When we have non-dual realization, we penetrate that the continuity of the mind is not a true mind. So we have non-dualistic realization, but we are not yet perfect Buddhas. We are only partly enlightened. When we become the perfect Buddhas, we come back to the beginning. That means There is nothing to grasp, nothing to hold to. And this is the nature of the mind. So the images appear, come and go, but the mind never changes. And the mind can influence and change the nature of these images as it likes. This is a perfect enlightenment. It does not like, it is the Dharmakaya itself, the pure wisdom itself, which does it. So there is no question of really liking. It is a question of becoming Dharmakaya, one who is non-dualistically realized, he becomes Dharmakaya. And because he is Dharmakaya, he also becomes the Sambhogakaya, the body of bliss, Pure Land, and the Nirmanakaya, the created body. All these bodies, they connected with the realization of the Dharma nature. Dharma nature is the nature of the mind. And Dharma nature in this tradition is the suchness. So this is very deep. So we all have what is called mula avidya, the root ignorance, because we think that uh, the mind which moves is suchness, but it in a way is neither suchness nor not suchness. It can never leave the suchness, but when it moves, it is not suchness in its pure form. When the mind moves, it cannot be suchness in its pure form, because it becomes alaya. It abides in these images. Abiding in the images, it is a nature of ignorance. Very deep, not easy to understand, but it is a challenge to think more and more. So because we don't see the mind as it truly is, as nothing but suchness, the text says, therefore arises no body mind and its thoughts. In Chinese, we have to again and again repeat, this text is only available in Chinese. In Chinese, thought means nian, and nian means memory. This is a very important thing. We have in Western philosophy something similar in the case of the Platonic interpretation of Socrates. When we think, actually, it is the memory which functions. Because when we think about images which appear in the mind. And these images which appear in the mind move the mind. In our case, but not in the case of a fully realized Buddha. These thoughts They have no swabhava. They don't have any nature of their own. They are these thoughts. They are dependent origination. Dependent origination is based on mind. And in this tradition, normally for Asanga Vasubandhu tradition, it is based on the mind which moves. In this tradition, it is based on the Tathagata Garbha, on the Buddha nature, which always remain the same. But because our we have ignorance, so this Buddha nature is, which is free from arising and passing away, is combined with arising and passing. And this combination is called alaya. We have learned before. So please repeat again and again. This is not easy to understand. We sentient beings, we are nothing but alaya. We are abiding mind. And this abiding mind has the aspect of non-arising and non-passing, and it has the aspect of arising and passing. These two aspects combined in this tradition, they are called alaya. And these both aspects, they permeate each other, we have explained. The ignorance permeates the suchness, and suchness permeates the ignorance. So we have we are mixture, wonderful mixture. Unbelievable what kind of mixture we are. The more we understand, the more we wonder how such a wonder of the world is possible, this wonder of the mixture. So in other words, we are ignorant because we don't understand that everything that is created by the mind, and the nature of the mind is nirvana, not one's own nirvana, but the nirvana which belongs to the very nature of the mind. When we understand that we are only mind, then we have no place to go, no place to move to. It is a wonderful. So this is very close to Chinese idea of spontaneity, zhiran. Because we don't understand zhiran, we don't understand spontaneity. We are always causing trouble to ourselves and causing troubles to others. So now comes the very famous comparison. We have to remember what again and again what was taught before. This nobody, which now is being explained, depends on the body. And the body again depends on the nobody. No enlightenment. And because they are in mutual relation, that is yatha bhuta dasana. That is seeing things as they really are. This is a true meaning of dependent origination from non-dualistic point of view. The Vipassana in Theravada is the synonym of Yatha Bhuta Dasana, seeing things as they are. In this tradition, seeing things as they are means seeing our non-enlightenment and our enlightenment always in mutual relation. So let us see the example now. It should be more clear with all this introduction we have had. The text says, in my translation, I tried, you may find some other translations, but I tried to be as close to the original as possible. So this can be compared to a man going astray, me, as to his direction. So because we have the root ignorance, which makes us identified with, which causes the mind to move, not just reflects things as a mirror. So we are, so to say, due to this root ignorance, we are like a man going astray. And what is he going astray to? As to the direction. He takes the west as the east, east as the west. If he separates from direction, he will not be astray. From the very beginning, this true mind has no place, no abode. Now we want to give it place, we want to give it abode, then we are like, instead of going east, we are going west. In other words, you are somewhere in Indonesia, you want to come to visit me in Prague, and you are going towards America. So you will have a long, long way to go. No, you cannot go east, you have to go west. And you cannot go south, you have to go north. So in other words, once we leave the suchness nature of the mind, we are going astray. And when we go astray, we start searching for direction, right or not? If he separates from the wrong direction, he will not go astray. So what is a practice we have learned in the beginning? What is a practice of this tradition? I Ching San Mei, the samadhi of one samskara, samadhi of one mind. As soon as the mind moves or not move, it is always one mind. And this one mind is the same for all beings. So from the very beginning, the true mind has no place to stay, no place to go, nothing to look for. But because we are estranged from ourselves, like the uh, like the heroes of the most famous Prague writer, the Kafka, they always estranged from themselves. So they always looking for something, but they don't even know what they're looking for. But they have to look for something because the uh, the world they live in is completely absurd. Because the world we live in is completely absurd, we always have to look for something. So this is precisely the situation. The very looking for something is kind of the absurdity. When you learn the Chinese tradition, which is, of course, a very peculiar type of Buddhism, always in a way mixed with Chinese culture. So you have always at the background this idea of spontaneity. The true mind is spontaneous. Now, because we don't know the spontaneity, we are estranged from ourselves. So we search and search and search, but the searching is itself an absurdity. The mind is not an absurdity, but the searching is the absurdity. So he now gives the explanation of the simile. Beings go astray as to bodhi. If separated from bodhi, that means a wrong body. Wrong body is what? Identification with the moving mind. This moving mind is cannot be separated from the real body. Yet, if it identifies as something which is really there, then it is always somehow in trouble, always looking for something. So when we don't search for anything, when we do not need to think, at that moment there is nothing but just body. Where is a mind when we do not think? Nobody can find it. When we think, nothing wrong about thinking, but the very essence of suffering is identifying with thinking. The less we identify, the more freedom we find. And why do we identify with thinking? Buddhism also explained, and it will be explained in our text also wonderfully. We identify with the thinking because we cling to our sensations, because we cling to our Vedana. And we cling to our Vedana because it will be explained very soon now, because we cling to the continuity of the mind as being something real. So because there is illusionary thinking as non-body, when as soon as the thinking appears, it is not body, we don't see the suchness of the mind, it is non-body. Non-body means being separated from one mind, which is same in all beings and which is suchness. So when we err from the true mind, we are experiencing non-body. So as soon as we start thinking and identify with thinking, we are experiencing non-body. Because there is illusionary thinking as non-body, so we can know the meaning of the body, meaning of the name body. If we don't know the non-body, we cannot know even the name of the body. So as we have explained, what we know as body, as enlightenment, we can only know based on non-enlightenment. We cannot know even the name of enlightenment without referring it to non-enlightenment. If we know the the enlightenment as separated from non-enlightenment, then it is not enlightenment. Because everything is dependent origination. So, meaning uh, thus explaining the true body without mind of non-body, there are no characteristics of body to explain. The characteristics of body, they are based on the characteristic of non-body. That is why the author first explained how we become enlightened, then he has to explain how is it possible we are non-enlightened, because we can only be non-enlightened in relation to the enlightenment. So when we think, we give rise to the pictures. And when we give rise to the pictures, it is the original ignorance, mula avidya. And when we have original ignorance, we already ignorant about the original enlightenment. The original enlightenment is the clarity of the mind. This clarity of the mind is vipassana. The clarity of the mind is awareness. So when we concentrate on mind, we concentrate on one mind, because whether there is object or non-object, it is always one mind in its true form, in its clarity. So when there is no thinking, it is also one mind. When there is thinking, the thinking has no characteristic of one's own. Therefore, it is also never separated from one mind. What has no characteristic of its own cannot be separated from one mind. So the true nature of beings is not different from the true nature of the Buddhas, which is the true enlightenment. 真觉. So when there is a picture which can be seen, so our mind will reveal the objects. When the mind reveals the objects, when we identify with these objects, so we go deeper and deeper into the complex of non-enlightenment. So this is very important if we want to understand Zen meditation. It does not mean that when we think we are on the wrong track. We cannot live without thinking. But we can live surely and much better when we don't identify with the thinking. We just do our job, and for doing our job well, the more we think, uh, the less clarity we may do. If we are philosophers, we do philosopher job. If we are psychologists, we do psychologist job. If we are this or that, we do that job. But for that, doing the job, this is again very much Chinese. For doing our job well, we do not think, we do not need to think. First, we have to understand. When we understand, we do not need to think. So understanding should go before thinking. If thinking goes before understanding, trouble. So in this perspective, the process of enlightenment is nothing but transforming the mind into wisdom. Transforming the mind into wisdom means live with awareness. And awareness in Buddhism is a synonym of vipassana. But this vipassana, in this tradition, most important part of vipassana is the understanding that the pictures of the mind and the essence of the mind, they cannot be separated. They are one mind. This is a great help for non-dualistic understanding of our experience. And non-dualistic understanding in this tradition is the ultimate understanding. As Lotus Sutra explains, all other understandings are only means for the ultimate understanding. The ultimate understanding uses the other understanding based on differentiation as a means to attain the ultimate understanding. This is the prevalent view in Chinese Buddhism and also in Tibetan Buddhism. Okay, so we did not come to the process of non-enlightenment. This process of non-enlightenment we will explain next week. If possible, I'm not sure what is expecting me. I'm going to a spa. I hope there will be, I will have facilities, my own room or some place there where I can be non-disturbed. And we can continue next week on Sunday as usual. Okay?
Yeah, 法师
Sunday is better than Saturday, no? Or is Saturday better than Sunday? I think Sunday is better.
Sunday is better, Pastor.
Okay. So next week, unless I inform you about some changes, Agus or I can pronounce
Viana. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with this name. So I will inform, but otherwise we just continue on Sunday, 2:30, the Central European time as usual. So let us now transfer merits to all sentient beings. And please, if you have any doubts, read again or and we start next time again with questions and answers. Today, Agus was late. You are the most diligent one in asking, but it is very important always to ask, not to accept anything for granted. We have to make effort to understand in our own